So the big news this week is Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Interior Defense Minister, has got one of his key campaign promises um, approved by Netanyahu to elect a new National Guard. And this is, of course, in return, Ben-Gvir promises to stay inside the coalition even though the judicial reforms were halted. And what we know so far is that 1% of the entire budget is going to be given to this new National Guard. And also what we know is that there's going to be a committee that's going to be formed that will have representatives from the Treasury, from the Defense Ministry, from the police, and they will be understanding who will really be in charge of this National Guard. Is it going to be under the Defense Minister? Is it going to be under the police? Is it going to be under the Interior Defense Minister? We're still not sure how's it going to look like. We'll only know maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months, maybe even next week. And one of the big things that we should really look at is the whole media response to this story and the politicians' response. So we have on the one hand people saying it's the far right in Israel creating a militia. Others have been saying that concerns have been raised amongst civil rights groups. Even Lapid, who calls Ben-Gvir on a regular basis the Pita and TikTok minister. I'm not really sure what it means, but it's incredibly derogatory, I'm sure. And he accuses the government of wasting money on Lapid, on Ben-Gvir's personal militia, instead of investing it in education, in housing, and in health. Even Gadi Eisenkot, the former chief of staff in Israel, and he now sits in the opposition under Benny Gantz. He came out against it, saying that it actually weakens and destabilizes the structure of defense in Israel, between the army, between the police. It destabilizes the institutions in Israel that are tasked with the defense. And of course, we really understand that a lot of these are serious concerns and they're genuine. And of course, we also need to keep in mind that Israel has got a very specific security need that most countries don't have. For instance, in Guardians of the Wall, 2 years ago, they were rioting in the streets in mixed towns where Arabs and Jews were living together, like Lod, and they were fighting each other. There was almost a civil war going on inside there. Or not a civil war, but at least a lot of aggressive and violent riotings against each side. And the police was shown to be, at best, insufficient to respond to these unique needs of having Arab citizens fighting Jewish citizens. And this new proposal for the National Guard was on Ben-Gvir's agenda for a long time. And we kind of really need to take everything that we hear and we see with a grain of salt from the media and from the opposition, because a year ago, Bennett, the Prime Minister, this was exactly his reform proposal. He wanted to create a National Guard, and he had the Chief of Staff, the Chief of Police, who now is against it because Ben-Gvir is in charge of it. So at the time, he was in favor of it. He said this would be a very positive move for Israeli defense. And also a lot of media that were praising Bennett for this new idea. And they were praising Omer Bar-Lev, the Interior Defense Minister, who was already seen to be in charge of this new National Guard. Even Lapid, who would then replace the Prime Minister, who was also in favor of it. This was his government proposing something good and positive and should be meeting Israel's unique security demands. And then the government fell apart and elections came about, and so this reform kind of was put in the side and instead was now taken upon and renewed by Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir. So maybe these politicians should be in favor of this reform. They themselves proposed it originally, but now all of a sudden they're against it because it's Itamar Ben-Gvir. So when we hear these arguments against Ben-Gvir, and especially from the media, when they were saying that it could be infringement of civil rights, it's personal militia, a lot of things, very negative coverage of this new group. We need to understand this isn't new. This was proposed a year ago, and at the time, a lot of people were very happy about it. So why are people against it? We should ask ourselves this: is it really before the facts are even shown about what the reform is? Are we just prejudiced against it because the government is right wing and because the Interior Defense Minister is Ben-Gvir, and it's easy to hate on them, or are there actually serious problems with this? That's a question we should be asking ourselves.